In the last video, we added state to our component such that it's managing the post array as a distinct piece of state. We also talked about, but haven't implemented yet, but we talked about how your UI is just a function of state. Whenever you change the state, your UI updates accordingly. In this video, we'll look at how we can update the state and thereby update our component's UI. We'll be looking at updating our UI such that whenever we press this remove button, it removes a photo from our photo wall. Clearly right now it doesn't really do anything. So as you've guessed it, whenever the remove button of a certain photo is pressed of a certain post, we want to update the state of our component by removing the element inside of the post property of our component state. We want to update this distinct piece of state, this array, such that it doesn't include the photo that we just decided to remove. However, as you can see, the remove button is all the way inside of the photo component, whereas the state is inside of the main component. How is this going to work? How will we get our button all the way over here to invoke some kind of function to update our state if our button is declared all the way in the photo component? Well, this is actually a common pattern. Before we get into how we're going to accomplish this, let's look at the end goal. The end goal is we're going to have a method inside of our main component class. That method will be called removePhoto. In this method, somehow, we're going to pass it into the photo component, the post into which we press the remove button on. So we're going to give it an argument of post removed. So that photo, that post that we just pressed the remove button on, we're going to use it to update our state by removing that specific post out of our post array, which would trigger the render method and update our UI with the new array of posts, an array that doesn't include the photo that we just clicked remove on, which would render a new set of photos that doesn't include the photo we just deleted. For now, however, our only goal is to invoke this method such that it takes as an argument the photo that we chose to remove, the post, and console.logs the post's description. Console.log post removed dot description. What we'll do is inside of the main component where our state lives, we made a function that's going to be responsible for updating the state. We'll pass that function all the way down to the photo wall component as a prop. And then from our photo wall component, we'll pass that function down to each photo that it's creating. And for each photo, we'll link that function to its remove button. That way, whenever we click the remove button, no matter which photo it is, it's going to invoke the function removePhoto and passes in the specific photo that we want to remove. Alright, so now that we looked at the theory, let's apply it. What we'll do is we'll pass this function as a prop down to our photo wall component, just like we're passing in posts as a prop to photo wall. So pass in onRemovePhoto as our prop equal to a reference of the removePhoto method. This dot removePhoto. And now inside of the photo wall component, we have to pass down the method to every single photo that's being mapped over. Once again, as a prop. So to every single photo that's being generated, give it a prop onRemovePhoto equal to props dot onRemovePhoto. So we're passing in the method from main.js to the photo wall. And from photo wall, we're accessing this method such that in turn, we're passing it to every single photo that's being mapped over, that's being generated. And now we can access this method in every single photo, such that whenever we click the remove button, we want it to invoke the function removePhoto, passing in the proper photo as an argument. And so, by writing onClick, when we click that certain remove button, we want to invoke the removePhoto function by setting the onClick handler equal to an arrow function. Whenever we click the remove button of a certain photo, it will invoke this arrow function such that inside the arrow function we want it to call props.onRemovePhoto. Let me just make sure I got this props spelled out correctly. We're passing it in as onRemovePhoto. We are good. So by calling props.onRemovePhoto, we're basically calling this method that was passed all the way down to it as a prop of onRemovePhoto. And it's going to call this method such that it passes in the proper post. And it should therefore console.log the photo description in which we click remove. Let's try it out. Go to your browser, open up the DevTools. Let's expand this a little bit. It's a bit too small. And if I click on this one, it prints out undefined. Let's check and see what the problem is. And for some reason, autocomplete made this into post message instead of post removed. So this entire time I've been printing something that's undefined. And so if that was confusing to you, I apologize. And if we try this again, we get beautiful landscape. Whatever photo that we click the remove button on, we're able to print out its description. That was step number 1. So the first roadblock is done. We're able to access the photo wherever we press remove. Now that photo that we just clicked on, we want to use it to update the state of our component, such that we're removing it from the array of posts, and by updating this state, it will re-trigger the render method. To update the state of the component, simply write this.setState. Inside of this .setState, we're going to pass in a function. And that function is going to return a brand new object, which is going to serve as our updated state. The first argument that's passed into our function is the current state of our component, state. We want to update this current state such that it removes one of the photos that we clicked on. To do that, we can return a new list of posts. And what we want to do is remove a certain photo from the current state of the post array. And so get the current state by writing state dot get the list of posts associated with that current state dot posts. And from the post array, filter out the photo that we just passed in, the photo that we pressed remove on. Dot filter. And so filter takes in a function that maps through, that loops through every single post. And we're going to filter out the post where we clicked remove from the post array by specifying a return value. Let's update the post array such that we want all posts that do not equal the removed post. Post does not equal post removed. Let's put some spacing in between those, and we should be good to go. Thus, we're filtering out the removed post from that array, and we're returning the updated state of this post's property. Before we run this, in summary, here's the grand scheme of things. When we click the button on a certain picture, let's say the On a Vacation button, we're updating the state of our component such that we're removing the On a Vacation post from the post array. We're filtering it out and updating the state of our component such that now it has a post property that doesn't include the On a Vacation post. And since we updated the state of our component, render gets called again and maps out the photos in our photo wall with our new updated post array, such that it doesn't include the post we just removed. If I rerun the app, press remove, and we get a big error. It crashes. Apparently this .setState is not a function. Well, if you were to look at the documentation, setState is indeed a method that we can access inside of our components. So why isn't it working? Well, the problem is that inside of our remove method, the this context is not defined. Well, you might ask yourself, this inside of the render method works just fine. It points to the component instance that's being rendered through the DOM. This works fine in the constructor as well. We're still pointing to the component instance there, such that we're initializing the component state. However, this inside of remove photo, it points to nil. It's not bound to our component. We cannot use any of its methods. The this binding in our remove photo method is broken. This is a problem. How do I update the component state if I'm not able to reference the component instance, to which I need to update the state? The problem is that right here, because this is part of an event handler, we've lost the this binding such that it is now in the context of a function, not our component. And naturally, the context of a function is nil by default. How do we restore the context of this? Well, that's simple. Inside of our constructor, we will modify our method removePhoto by setting it equal to itself. This.removePhoto is equal to this.removePhoto. Notice that in our constructor, we do have access to this such that it points to our instance. Just like in render, we also have access to this. These aren't event handlers, so the context for this in the constructor and the render method, it's still pointing to our instance. It's not broken. But with the event handler, we have to modify it in the constructor by writing .bind this, such that this is always properly bound to our method, and the context is always correct. It doesn't point to a function. All right, let's test this out and see if everything works out. Press the remove, and indeed everything works out pretty well. This is looking good. Let's summarize what we did very briefly. I'm going to restore all of the pictures. And so step number 1 was to access this method inside of every photo component. We passed the method removePhoto to our photo wall as a prop. And from the photo wall, we passed it down to every single photo. In that same function, we made it the event handler of every single remove button for every single photo. So whenever we click the remove button of one of these photos, it will trigger the onClick handler and calls the function removePhoto, passing in its post as an argument. In that post itself that we clicked the remove button on, we're using it to update the state of our component by filtering it out from the post array of the current state, and thereby updating the state with a new posts array that doesn't include the photo that we just removed. So if I were to press remove on, let's say, the beautiful landscape photo, it would get filtered from the post array, updating the state, and the post property of our state would then only have 2 other photos, since we just removed the landscape photo. The main component is then notified, hey, my state was just updated. I have to re-render the UI. So it invokes render. It re-invokes render such that we're passing in the filtered array of our updated state to the photo wall. And since the array now only has 2 elements, it's only going to generate 2 posts. Hence why the photo gets removed. Try it out, and we're golden. And that is all for this video. In the next one, we'll talk about prop types.